Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time we've got the pleasure of watching Szikorski playing in the Tier 9 Soviet heavy tank, the ST-1. Now this wasn't the original Tier 9 Soviet heavy tank, this came in a second branch, or albeit many years ago. Originally the IS-4 used to be the Tier 9 Soviet heavy tank that led on into the IS-7. However, when Wargaming split the branch to create a brand new second branch, the IS-4 was replaced by the ST-1. And you know what, those were some really big boots to fill, because frankly back then the IS-4 was probably the greatest tank, I'd say, at Tier 9. It was an absolute monster and nobody really knew how to pen it. And so, did the ST-1 fill those really big IS-4 boots? Well, yes it did. It's still a kick-ass tank, even though it's been out in the game for probably, I'd say, at least 3, maybe even 4 years. It's still absolutely awesome. Now, what is awesome about this tank? Well, it's the armor, it's the armor. It's got 140 millimeters, or is it 160 now? 160 on the lower plate, 140 on the upper hull, and the side armor of this tank is still 140 millimeters thick. And so that means that this vehicle has more armor on the side than most tanks have on the front. And if we're looking at the rear hull armor on this tank as well, it's still got 100 millimeters of rear hull armor. Many tanks, when you angle that at 45 degrees, are going to struggle, well, at least in this kind of a matchup, because Szikorski is in a rather nice matchup here for the ST-1, with there only being 2 top-tier tanks on the enemy team, and one of them has just been spotted. The E-75, a formidable opponent for the ST-1. We're going to have to see how Szikorski tries to handle him later on. So the ST-1, this just, as I mentioned, formidable armor. That is the key strength of this tank. The turret armor is 250 at the front, 160 at the side, and 160 at the rear. And so that means what you want to do with the ST-1 is just bait your opponents into shooting you. That 112 reversing, misses the lower plate, took a chancy shot. Szikorski absorbs it into his tracks, but there you're starting to see one of the least desirable aspects of the ST-1, and that is the gun handling. It's absolutely awful. 3.4 seconds aim time, terrible gun dispersion values, and also not the best accuracy at 0.38. And the DPM is less than 2,000 damage per minute. And that definitely falls behind the T10, which I believe has 2,150, the M103 and the Conqueror, who are about in those regions as well. And those tanks have all got significantly better aim time than the 3.4 seconds and better dispersion than the ST-1 gets. And so that means that it does take a long time to aim, but when you finally get there, you are pulling off some serious alpha damage with the 122mm Soviet main armament. Well, then again, you've been using 122mm guns on your Tier 7 tank, your Tier 8 tank, and now your Tier 9 tank, but every single time they just take a step up in how powerful they are. Oh, that's really unfortunate, leaving the E-75 on 16 of his hit points. I bet you Szikorski would have loved to have just rolled a tiny little bit higher there to take him out. He fires an AP round looking for the cupola on top of the tank, doesn't quite go in, and I like what he does now. He's going to load a high explosive round, or not? No, he's not going to. Oh, there you go, just a little bit of delay on his plan there, but he is doing the right thing now, loading a high explosive round to remove the final remaining 16 hit points of the E-75. And you can tell that Szikorski really knows how to use his ST-1 here. The way that he side scrapes is just absolutely beautiful, because this tank has a front-mounted turret. That means that it's just absolutely mental for when you want to try and side scrape around the corners. Well, actually, no, it's not because the turret is front-mounted, thinking about it, actually. It would be far better to have a rear-mounted turret on a tank like this when you're side scraping. I think it's a fact of the lower plate, you know, the 160 millimeters, and the whole of the side is so just darn thick, and the way that the top is angled is what makes this vehicle an absolutely monstrous side scraper. So, Szikorski secures his second kill there. But you know what? 4 minutes into the game, his team have not fared very well. In fact, things are looking very bleak for his side here as he misses the Type 64. Not necessarily a terrible shot there, a rather nippy Tier 6 Chinese premium light tank bombing it around. Will he be able to connect the second shot? Yes, he will. Much better. Not only damaging him for 476, but also detracking him, forcing him to use his repair kit, which might come in handy later on. And you know what? Szikorski is going to have to definitely put on his man pants if he wants to be able to win this one. And that's because he's only got 2 remaining tanks on his team. He still has to deal with the E50 on the enemy team. And there are 10 tanks left. And he is getting surrounded. There goes one of his allies. How healthy is the KV-3? Oh. Well, not very healthy anymore after the artillery looks like he just slam dunks them. Szikorski found himself there in a 1 versus 10 situation. But you know what? What a great way to start the 1 versus 10 by taking out the most dangerous tank on the enemy team, the EU-50, with a single shot, rolling just slightly high there for 447. But as I was mentioning, the 122mm guns on the Soviet tanks. On the IS, you have 175mm of pen. On the IS-3, you've got 226mm of pen, I believe. But when you step up onto the ST-1, you've got 258mm of penetration on your standard rounds, which means that you don't really have to aim very much at most of the tanks left on the enemy team. But he's really got to watch himself right now. He is getting absolutely harassed by all of the light tanks on the enemy team. He goes one way, he goes the other. I like what he's doing here. Well, he's obviously not intentionally doing this, but he comes around the corner and the Type 64 unable to go through the rear of the ST-1 in his first 2 shells because that armor is just so darn thick. And so frankly, if you angle this tank at 45 degrees, your armor is absolutely incredible. Of course, the 160mm on the back of the turret and also on the side of the turret there, unable to deal with the RU-251. But Szikorski has now changed his 1 versus 10 now into a 1 versus 6 with 3 self-propelled guns on the enemy team. Fortunately for him, he has a Sturmil right where he wants him, bounces 300 alpha damage. Looks like that Sturmil was not using the top Ferdinand guns, so to say, on that tank, but instead still using a low caliber armament. Will he find the RU-251? Oh, that's a bit frustrating. The RU-251 has got 471 hit points left, and the artillery finally starts to rebalance this thick Soviet armor. So what is Szikorski going to do? Of course, he's got to try and take out these light tanks, but how is he going to catch them in a slow lumbering Soviet tank? And he also has to try and avoid the artillery on the enemy team. Well, that's one way to catch the fast tanks on the enemy team. I think that Type 64 panicked. I think he thought, well, we're not taking this guy out. We've already lost 5 of the 10 tanks that we had. Maybe we should go and cap out. But the Type 64 finds himself in the open, panics. Szikorski doesn't, shuts him down, now changing his 1 versus 10 into a 1 versus 4 in a much more favorable situation now. Now, of course, he is not an idiot. He doesn't want to expose himself to any more of the artillery who are likely to be still sitting in their base in this kind of a location. There you go, right the cap circle there. And so Szikorski has got himself dug into a lovely defensive position here. The way that the building comes round, he's got a nice little junction that he can use, but he still wants to try and keep spotting. I think he's starting to get a little bit paranoid that the enemy artillery might be trying to come in and shotgun him, while the RU-251 just tries to keep proxy spotting him so that the artillery can make a move in and probably surround him. But the RU-251 makes a really bad mistake there, allowing Szikorski to catch him. And that's strike 1 and strike 2. Unfortunately, he does take some damage from the tier 8 German light tank, but he probably doesn't mind about that too much because now if he manages to catch the RU-251 again, he is going to be a dead man. So it looks like these buildings are giving him some massive protection here, and the enemy artillery unable to find the shells in. But remember, the longer that he leaves it, the longer he gives for the artillery to sneak in. And here comes the Lorraine 155-51 sitting around the corner. Where is the RU-251? The RU-251 trying to hound him in right now. Will the RU-251 make a mistake? Doesn't look like it. How many more artillery are going to join this little camp-off right now? I think the Lorraine is waiting. He's waiting for more people to make some opportunities. Maybe he's waiting for Szikorski to go after the RU-251, pre-aimed on the corner, stopping him from leaving his little hole. Szikorski has had enough, and it looks like he's going to make his way forwards to try and find the RU-251. Doesn't quite manage it, and the Lorraine comes around the corner to make his move. Szikorski, watch out! Oh, now he's going to be in the open for the artillery shells, still camping in the base, but he comes around, the Lorraine misses him, now down to 303 hit points, but he finishes him off. What will the RU-251 do? Will he realize that the reload on the ST-1 is so long? Now that the Lorraine is down, the M44 decides to join the fray as well. Is he going to mess around? Oh, that was a mistake. allowing Szikorski to catch his hull armor right in front of him. He shuts him down, and the RU is now trying to flank him. Keep your side armor and your front armor towards him. Now angle at 45 degrees. Oh, the panic. His knees must be shaking. His arms must be all over the place right now as he misses that shot on the RU-251 Speerpanzer. But again, the track traverse and the turret traverse on this tank, not the best. The turret traverse is absolutely awful, as we can see here. But will he finally manage to catch the RU-251? Oh, he's still calm. The longer he leaves this artillery alive, just taking punts at him here, the closer he's going to be getting to losing this game. Just one foul mistake now. Oh, and I tell you what, talking about mistakes, RU-251, what were you doing there? Played so well. Baited Szikorski so incredibly well there, and then one final move, and that was strike 1 and strike 2 and strike 3, as we called out with the 2 shots received there. And that's all it really takes from your higher alpha damage guns such as this. The artillery misses, and with that miss and the blind fire, Szikorski now knows what he has to do with 4 minutes left on the game, and that is to try and get yourself into a situation to win it. Sure, he can drive around looking for the artillery for the next couple of minutes, but he has to make sure he makes it into the enemy's cap circle before 1 minute and 40 seconds is up, if he wants to risk it. Obviously, if you get into the cap circle with 3 minutes left, then you can afford the enemy tank to have to come and interrupt you and then still be able to cap out, or should we say force them to come in and make a play. If you leave it right up until that 100 seconds or 1 minute and 40 seconds that you need to be able to cap out completely, you are risking it, because obviously an artillery player might wait until the very last second, come around the corner and splash you, and unless you roll high on them, then you're going to risk a draw for the game. So it is generally more sensible to get into the cap circle faster, especially when you're playing against artillery. So Szikorski now is making his way straight towards the enemy base. There is the threat of the FV-207 on the enemy team, and that high caliber British Tier 8 self-propelled gun will only need to splash anywhere near his tank to be able to take him out. The strong Soviet Tier 9 heavy tank armor has certainly got him to this stage of the game. We'll have to see how much he's blocked later on, and I'm sure it's going to be a steel wall if he manages to survive this. He's on 11 kills. He's looking for his 12th. He has killed 9 enemy tanks in a row by himself. But can he finish off the remaining self-propelled gun on the enemy team? How's he going to sneak in now with 2 minutes and 35 seconds left? He wants to make his move in towards the cap circle. Now, do you know what the worst thing that could happen right now would be? Is if the enemy artillery started capping, but we do not have time to talk about that as the FV-207 is not trying to cap. He's sitting right in front of Szikorski, who aims for him. He misses! Oh god, no, don't do it. No heartbreak. Not today. Not a heartbreak today. Reload, reload. Oh, the artillery misses. Don't fluff the second shot. Yeah, right into the top of the hull. He rolls for 430, which was pretty much about a 50-50 whether his 440 alpha damage would have taken out that Tier 8 British self-propelled gun in a single shot, but he indeed does. Szikorski finishing this 1 versus 10. What an achievement. So this was Szikorski's ace tanker in the ST-1. He also picks up the one that everybody wants, the Kolobanov's medal for standing alone against at least 5 opponents, in this case 10, a Pascucci's medal for finishing off 3 self-propelled guns on the enemy team. Well, thank you Tactical Vision for subscribing for the first time while I'm not streaming. Okay, thank you very much for that. As well as a Pools medal for at least 10 kills, in this case 12, a high caliber medal for the 4,800 damage he dealt. That's not a lot for 12 kills, but when we consider that there weren't that many hit points on the enemy team, it's still impressive. In addition to the steel wall, and boy what a steel wall this was, with 4,735 damage blocked, receiving 28 shots this battle. And that's why the ST-1 is still an absolute daddy of a tank at Tier 9. So Szikorski, thank you so much for uploading this on the What Replays website for the community to enjoy. I thoroughly did, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video as well. If you did, please consider giving it a like. It really helps the channel out. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the ST-1 and how it stacks up to the T10, which has certainly been receiving a lot of love recently. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.